Welcome to MakeCast. I'm Dale Dougherty. I bet few of you, when you want something sweet to eat, would think a 3D printer might satisfy your craving by producing a chocolate bar. Well, a Cocoa Press 3D printer would make that possible. Instead of plastic filament, it prints chocolate in any shape you desire. One couple bought a Cocoa Press printer for their wedding so they could make personalized favors for their guests. In this episode, I talk with Ellie Weinstein about an idea that became a project and then became a company called Cocoa Press. Ellie had the idea about 10 years ago, but slowly and steadily, she developed the process and the machine, and now she's launching Model 2 of the Cocoa Press printer. I love hearing Ellie's story, and whether you like chocolate or not, you might appreciate learning what it took for her to keep going through stops and starts and proving that nothing is as easy as it seems at first, but the challenges can make the reward all the more sweet. And before we begin, I wish may the holidays be happy for you and yours, and make yourself something that lights up the long winter nights. From me and all of us at Make, Happy New Year. I'm here with Ellie Weinstein and glad to see you. Where are you right now?
I am at our new Cocoa Press office in Philadelphia. We just
Philadelphia.
moved, I don't know, 3 months ago, within Philly, but
Yeah,
pretty excited to be here now.
great. I didn't know you were in Philadelphia. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background. How did you even know that you would be doing what you're doing?
I didn't know I would be doing what
No.
I'm doing. Yeah, I'm Ellie. I am the founder and CEO of Cocoa Press. We make 3D printers that print chocolate. And I guess my background is in mechanical engineering. I went to the University of Pennsylvania and studied that. I don't know, I'm just obsessed with 3D printing and stumbled into chocolate printing about 10 years ago now.
You were at Maker Faire Bay Area, and I didn't get a chance to,
Mhm.
but said, come by and do a taste test. And I would suspect that half your challenge is to convince people that a 3D printed chocolate is not an inferior piece of chocolate.
It is interesting how many people expect 3D printing to change the flavor of the chocolate. And it doesn't, but it is still the same chocolate. And if anything, because we're able to do unique textures and make shapes that are just not possible to make with traditional chocolate making techniques, it actually can sometimes enhance the mouthfeel. And while it's not changing the flavor, it still makes the overall experience and taste better of the
Yeah.
chocolate.
Can you just give us an overview of how it works? I imagine you're
Yes.
melting it at some level, right?
I'm sure most people who are listening know this. I know you know this. 3D printing overall is a process of building up an object layer by layer. So we're putting the bottom part of the chocolate down and then just building that up slowly over time. With general 3D printing, you have a spool of filament that you're heating up as it's being printed. But with ours, all of the chocolate is being heated at the same time, preheated even. And so it's all melted. All the chocolate that you need for your print is melted ahead of time in a little like cylinder shape, like a syringe type of thing.
Mhm.
And so that's probably the biggest difference right off the bat is just we preheat all the chocolate. It's there. We have 2 heaters, crazy precise within plus or minus a tenth of a degree Celsius. Yeah, it prints it out or just below body temperature, actually, with about 10 pounds of force. And then it solidifies at room temperature with no need for any
Hmm.
active cooling.
So something like that we might know, like a chocolate Easter bunny that's hollow on the inside, is something you could print.
Yeah, you can make it hollow. You could make it just about
Solid.
solid. You could make it with gyroid infills or whatever infill is on your favorite slicer these days.
Did you have this idea and start playing around with it, and then later on it became a business?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
okay, to talk about that road, if you will, exploring
Yeah,
something and then
I can get carried away with talking about this, so I'll try to keep it
no, please
somewhat
do.
brief. But I started this actually as a senior in high school in 2014, and I
Oh,
was fortunate
10
enough
years ago.
to, yeah, I was fortunate enough to be at a school in 2014 that had 3D printing. It was a little less popular in high schools than it is now, and basically was in an intro to engineering class, thought I could build anything, and said, "Oh, I want to build a 3D printer." And my teacher looked at me and said, we have one over there. Go do something that doesn't already exist. And at that point, there may have been a couple of DIY chocolate printers out there, but there really wasn't anything commercial. And arguably, there's still not very much commercial in chocolate printing. So it became a 1 semester project that turned into a full year project, which turned into
At high
my
school.
hobby in
At
high
high
school. In high school,
Before you
yeah.
went to college, you were
Yep.
doing this, right?
Yep. And I'm doing this, and I say, okay, yep, mechanical engineering is definitely what I want to do. I didn't know anything about CAD. I didn't know anything. I remember how mind-blowing it was when I found out you could actually make threads in a piece of metal by tapping a hole. That was all stuff that I learned in the course of this project, and
Yeah.
definitely took a lot of inspiration from the original MakerBot replicator that we had there, and downloaded the CAD to look at all of that type of thing.
Mhm.
So that's how it started. Then I went to college. Like I said, I was at Penn studying mechanical engineering, and just picked it up every once in a while whenever I had downtime, winter break, summer break, whatever it might be. And it ended up being the summer going into my junior year of college that I was taking some classes that summer, taking physics E&M in the morning, working in the school's 3D printing lab in the afternoon, and then in the evenings, I would literally go home, make dinner, come back to the lab, and I'd taken 20 square feet of this room and like a 5-foot table by like maybe 4 feet back, and decided, okay, I'm going to redo this machine to make it actually work and be able to print more than, I don't know, 13 layers tall. My brother convinced me to apply to actually go to Maker Faire. And I swear I'm not saying this just because I'm talking to you, but he said, you really should try to show this off at New York Maker Faire, which I had actually been to the year before in 2017, I think. Or 2016 I'd been. So I showed it off in 2017. When I got in, I was so excited. And that is where it started, being like, hey, maybe this could be a business.
So how was it when you showed it at Maker Faire
Yeah.
that year? Did it work?
Okay, so it was a 90-degree day in September that
Oh,
year, and I was outside.
you're worried
So
about.
the answer was it didn't work very well, but I was able to do a couple 2-layer things, and it worked well enough. I had finished that prototype 3 days before. I was interviewed by, blanking on the person's name, but who ran a website at this time called 3 Digital Cooks. People were asking, how much does this cost? How many have you made? Like, where can I buy them? I finished this 3 days ago.
I know.
At that point, I had been kicked out of the lab because the school year had started. And so I was doing this from the corner of my bedroom with,
This is just at the start of the school year, right?
yes, exactly. It's Maker Faire New York was what,
Or
September?
28th or so. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So beginning of the school year, I just started dating someone who 7 years later is now my fiance. And so she thought I was like a little crazy, which she's right. But that's how it started. People were just coming up to me because I was in the future of food section and looking at this, and
Yeah.
it put a little bit in me of, hey, maybe there is a market for this. Maybe this is something people want. But also I was behind in.
I'm just really happy to hear that story. I've always hoped that Maker Faire was almost like this pre-commercial opportunity. Like before you even know if it's interesting, suddenly you get this feedback from people. And you ask those questions and you go,
Yeah,
what is it they want? And could I deliver it?
absolutely. I had a group of my friends come up. We stayed in one of my brother's friends' houses for the weekends. It was really fun. That
Right.
was a cool Maker Faire.
You still had 2 more years of school to finish, right?
Yes. So I put it away after that. I was so behind on my schoolwork. You put it away in school if you're not doing work the first week or so because they're just
Right.
telling you what textbooks to buy. But I was behind. Put it away. Was convinced to go to this other event in January where accidentally everyone else there was a startup, and they accidentally asked me to be on the panel. And me being me, I just said yes before realizing.
Good for you.
So now I'm on a panel with a whole bunch of other people in a startup, and this is like a hobby. So that was the next thing. Put it away again. I had another semester to complete. And what really changed things was my senior year of college, we had our senior design capstone project and had to decide what to do. My team really wanted to work on Cocoa Press. It was someone who was really interested in thermodynamics who later went on to do a PhD, someone who was really interested in the design and the graphic design. And so a consumer product was really appealing to her, and the programming, etc. It was a perfect match for the team. I was actually one of the people saying, I don't think we should do this because giving up control is scary.
Yeah.
But senior design went well. I had school resources now. I could talk to professors. Our advisor was the fluids professor.
So you incubated it by yourself 4 years without really getting other people involved. And then this senior design project, it makes it a team. Makes it you have a team.
And then that year, it was like 5 out of 6 classes I would have needed for the engineering entrepreneurship minor. So I didn't get the minor, but I took most of them. The last class I took was this class called Engineering Entrepreneurship Lab with Professor Jeffrey Babin. And you would use your own startup idea as your class project to learn about all of it. So it was 3 hours once a week, and we would just sit around. He literally bought pizza for the class every week. This was his like hobby class. It was his passion.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So my last semester in college, 204 classes was just me working on Cocoa Press and getting credit for it. So that's how it started.
Can I ask a question? Because it's come up in the past for makers at colleges. Do you give up any IP rights?
I know every school does it differently.
Yeah.
At Penn, and I don't know what their rules are now, but at the time at Penn, they had pretty good rules for undergrads. They basically said, you own all IP, but you do need to run it by our legal department. And they interviewed me. They interviewed a couple of professors. I don't remember if they talked to my teammates, but like I got something informal, but in writing from my teammates saying they didn't own the IP. And so then I left with a letter saying, Penn has no right to any of the intellectual property of this. So grad students, I know they're like a little more.
Yeah, it's still different because they're paid often to work on.
Exactly.
It's good to bring it up because people should ask.
Totally. I won a few different awards and stuff. So I got somewhere in the realm of $20,000 as I was leaving college to keep working on this, and free space for 6 months in their Innovation Accelerator and stuff like that. And they still didn't take any IP, even though I got all this money and all these awards.
Good for
Appreciate that.
So you graduate. Do you make a decision to like, I'm done with school. My project is now my business. Or do you think about getting a job?
Applying for a job seemed difficult, and doing my own thing, while it's more difficult, is easier to not apply for a job. I had applied to do a robotics master's program, which I did get into, decided not to do. At Penn. And also started the LLC at the same time, that second semester of college. But once I got into the Penn Innovation Accelerator, which is like a mile off campus, but still on campus, it was pretty clear I was going to try that out for a little bit. And I went full time right from school.
Now, you lost your design team, right?
Yes.
So it's all back in your court again, right?
One of the people was still my roommate for a couple more years. And so he would help me with, I don't know, like various math and programming things, just like a very smart person, obviously much more informal. That was rough to lose everyone I was working with, to lose all of the access to the school's resources, all of that.
But did you have a pretty good prototype at that point?
I thought so. I look back and I realized I had no idea what it takes to launch a hardware product, but at the time I thought so,
Because your challenge then was to move from a prototype to something you could manufacture, right?
Yeah. And I think that's unique for a hardware company to start up. Having already built 3 full prototypes, having a proof of concept from my engineering entrepreneurship class, having run customer surveys, really having a good idea. I don't think that's common in a hardware startup specifically.
Yeah. What was your vision for the market for it at that point? Like industrial or consumer, I guess is what I'm asking.
Industrial more than consumer at that point. We were talking to everyone from more than chocolate shops, actually bakeries, because they're used to doing customized cakes and other stuff, but don't want to buy equipment to work with chocolate. And just an all-in-one chocolate steak. More on the industrial space at that point.
That involves going out and finding those potential first
Yeah.
customers and getting them to try a new method of doing something that they've been doing probably for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Our competition was always the status quo. There was no one else really doing it.
So you had to do that too, right? Like you didn't have a salesperson yet
Nope, not at
or
the time.
someone.
Not at the
Okay.
time. I hired someone who started, I want to say March 2nd, 2020. Great time to hire someone.
Yeah. They'll
That-
always remember that when they were hired. Huh?
Oh yeah. So it was just me until then. And then, yeah, obviously COVID was a mess.
Say the next year or two. What changed? Or what did you have to accomplish?
At the time in my building was another 3D printing company, Levy. They switched their name from BioBots. Since then, they've been acquired by 3D Systems and they had left the building. But I got to talk to Ricky, who ran that company all the time. And I was on the first floor of the building. I would leave my door open often because of HVAC issues. And he would just come by and he'd say, Elliot, what are you going to sell? You have to make money. What are you going to sell? The printer, the chocolate, until I can sell the printer. That's what I was doing at that point. We ended up launching our first printer the fall of 2020, and it was just an absolute failure from every perspective. And that was a wake-up call at that point.
Yeah.
That was the first of, I would say, 2 or 3 times that Cocoa Press almost shut down.
So you probably weren't paying yourself
No.
and everything went into the product, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you thought you would manufacture? How many did you think you would have to make, and how did you go about
We were
thinking?
hoping to sell 25 of them to start. We had talked to a sheet metal manufacturer that was in Western New York. I had toured another one a little more locally, but the place in Western New York was very kind to us, was so excited about what we were doing. And
Great.
so it just helped a little bit on like, how do you launch a hardware product? And they were great.
So can you tell me a bit about, because at least some people in your position get on a plane and go to China, right?
Mhm.
Over the years, talking to people, I go, I wish, and they wish too, that there was more opportunity for American manufacturers to get involved,
Sure.
especially small to mid-size ones but sometimes they don't know how to interface with a new product.
Sometimes it's about not knowing how to interface. Sometimes it's about cost. I find that people often think, okay, manufacturing in China is going to take this $100 product and make it $105 or something if you make it in the US. And for what I found, prices in China there was one part that I got quoted in one set of parts I got quoted in a whole bunch of places. And manufacturing in China was 40% of the cost of the US. So sometimes it is really hard to say, no, actually, this $100 product is now going to be $220 or $210, which is a huge difference. There were some parts I could not source from the US. Our double paned argon filled glass door, I tried and I tried and I could not get anyone to make them in the US. I found a place in China on Alibaba and they did it for, I forget, $60 each. Custom size, just incredible. And then other places in the US, a heater company that I found was great to work with, they just sent it out to China anyway to get it made. So I was paying that premium for what I thought was US made, but it was actually just a US company getting them sent out. Since then, we do get most of our stuff made in China with LDO, who also goes to maker fairs and events and is just like a wonderful steward of the community. But those are some of my thoughts about US versus Chinese manufacturing.
So it helps,
working with
but-
LDO is amazing.
You've produced 7 and you sold those?
Some of them. Some were demos. One went to Linus Tech Tips, got destroyed by UPS. They put a pallet jack through it. Spent 8 months fighting insurance to get that money, which I did eventually get because they put a pallet jack through it and then lost the package. I did get it back eventually.
Doing a business is a bunch of those war stories. Like you never think that's where you're going to spend your time, but it is all those things like insurance and stuff that comes up and hits you in the face.
Oh, insurance constantly comes up and hits me in the face. The number of insurance companies I've talked to that says, are you 3D printing guns? And I'm like, I don't think chocolate. Like, what are you asking me right now?
What don't you understand about chocolate?
If somebody wants to make a chocolate Nerf gun or something, as Zach Friedman tried, but like,
Yeah.
All power to you, but don't deny my insurance because of this, please.
Yeah. How did you transition into the company you are today? Like, how many people you
Yeah.
have now?
Right now, we have 4 people full time. And then, I don't know, depending on how you count it, 3 to 4 contractors we work with pretty regularly. And then a few other community members who are just amazing humans and help us
Yeah.
out in return
Yeah.
for as much chocolate as they want. I mentioned earlier there were 3 times where Cocoa Press almost disappeared. That first time was where we are in the story now, like after the printer failed to sell. And that was due to various reasons, everything from the product not working as well, shipping being difficult, not making enough, so we had to raise the price, etc. Just bad
Mhm.
product market fit overall. I said, okay, let's become our own customer. And we spent the next, I don't know, timelines here, year and a half selling chocolate and sold tens of thousands of dollars of chocolate, got into company systems, university systems. And sometimes once you're in their system as a preferred vendor, every department will slowly find you and say, oh, wait, we can do this custom thing and you can be paid very easily by our company. Great. So we
They were ordering custom chocolate, not prepackaged bars or things like that. I
N
assume.
not prepackaged bars, except one of the things I realized is, like, where does 3D printing really make sense in here? And so I would actually make at this point, I had some chocolate equipment. I would actually make blank bars and then 3D print text on top of them. And it was great. 90-second print. I think I had 4 of those 7 printers, or maybe 3 of the 7 printers. So thousands and thousands of chocolate bars. And the chocolate made it everywhere. I sold some to the US ambassador to Germany, and she brought it to Germany and to the White House. She was meeting with the president at the time I think I don't remember exactly what it was, but they weren't allowed to eat it, obviously, due to security concerns. I know some White House staffers and folks got to eat my chocolate. That was pretty cool. That
That
was
is
pretty
cool.
cool. So we became
So
our own customer. And
you weren't
that's-
shipping machines, you were shipping chocolate that you'd make.
Yes,
That's it, right?
exactly. We would look for the businesses, there were higher quantities. For people, we worked with a local chocolate shop and they made like colorful, flavorful bonbons, and then we did the customized bar. And so
Mm,
we were trying to use what's the benefit of traditional chocolate making? What's the benefit of
right.
3D printing in this? Hot chocolate bombs were big at the time. One complaint from chocolate shops was you have these 2 half spheres, then you have to put them together well and make the seam. I can just print this in a way cooler shape than just a sphere and make a pause in the middle, put in the marshmallows, and I put some edible glitter inside and keep going. We sold hundreds of 3D printed hot chocolate bombs as well. It's
That's nice.
fun.
On the technology side, was there anything that had to happen? We talked about manufacturing a little bit, but was there anything that you found some part or something that made a difference, or you've had to do programming that made a difference? How did the technology side develop during this period?
Not very much during that period. It was really focusing on use cases. But I didn't want to be a chocolate shop, right? I didn't want to compete with there's 3,000 chocolate shops in the country. I wanted to do the hardware because that's what I'm interested in. And
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't interested in running a company that didn't interest me. And so what happened was it was me and someone who was in college, Will, at the time. And we looked at all of the 3D printers out there and said, what should we do? Let's work with an existing like manufacturer and just put our extruder on there. Because what worked badly on the printer was the gantry system, and what worked well was the chocolate aspects. And that's just silly. Like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. So we started working with this company, didn't go well. They ended up folding. They stole some
American?
of our equipment. An
American?
American company.
Yeah.
Yep. They folded. They took some of our equipment. I've since met them in person and they were just like, oh, yeah. So that was a little bit of a kick. And we said, okay, let's check out this boron printer. Luckily, we hadn't wasted too much time with them. So we looked at the boron printers. That's just like an open source 3D printing group, basically. And I loved the V0, the small printer. So anyway, long story short, we made a prototype using a V0, brought it to the Midwest Rec Rat Festival, met the team. At that point, that was the closest Cocoa Press ever got to leaving. I was actively interviewing for other jobs at this point. I was like, I can't do this anymore. This printer might work, but it's going to be a side thing, and maybe I can build it back up to my full-time thing. And at that event, everything changed. Unrelated to this, I met someone and got to fulfill my dream of being on BattleBots. And so I'm on Team Mammoth in BattleBots, which is really fun. And I met the Voron folks, and I got an email from Max, who's RCF, the founder of the
Right.
Voron project. And he said, paraphrasing, hey, let's make your printer, but good. And he unfortunately came down with COVID from that event and had the most productive COVID you've ever seen anyone have. And he just redesigned the whole machine, basically. And we worked for the next year to make what then became the printer we started selling last year. I'm forever grateful for Max on that one.
That's great. So someone from the community steps up and says, I can help you. And
Yeah.
that's pretty remarkable. And you were just about ready to give up.
Oh, yeah. No, I
And
was
made a-
actively searching for things. At one point, I was this may have been a little bit earlier, but at one point, I was interviewing for a company in Canada. I was going to move to Canada, and the border was closed. So it couldn't happen. And was frustrated at the time, but so thankful now that the border was closed due to COVID, of course, that there was no way for me to move to Canada.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So Max helps you produce this new version of the printer. And then where do you go get that made? A different process, right? The seven.
Yes. So very different. There's no sheet metal in this. There's one injection molded part, but it was an off-the-shelf part. We didn't have to buy tooling for it. And that was something that was really important to me, is not putting a bunch of upfront money into this. I always have the question, like, when do you launch a product? At what stage? I think that's something the 3D printing world is reckoning with at the moment, from so many failed Kickstarters to printers that they say, okay, this printer is available today, it's shipping, and everywhere in between.
Yeah.
But when I felt ready, I put it up for sale. The company was just me at the time. Amy, who had been working with me, had left to go to Formlabs. I was like, okay, let's try this out. So put it up for sale.
What's the price tag?
$1,500. Same price it is now. Although a quick plug for me, we just announced Cocoa Press 2, and there's a $300 discount for pre-ordering it. But importantly, people only had to put $100 down to reserve it, and that was refundable.
That's cool.
I just wanted to see how do you figure out what the demand is for a new product?
Yeah, exactly.
Impossible.
That is where Kickstarter was interesting, but it was also a challenge then.
It is. I decided not to go that route just because I don't remember any specific products at the time, but I feel like there were a couple of high-profile 3D printing missteps. Ultimately, there's just not that much different about a Kickstarter versus your own pre-order campaign, but the visibility is different. So we worked with LDO, who had made some parts for the original printer, but had really saved us with making a custom extruder motor that was one of the defining things. We moved from air pressure back to a stepper motor driven system.
Is that kind of the heart of the machine?
Yeah. So I have an interesting prototype because of its strange colors, but of the newer extruder here. And there's this lead screw in the middle. I guess people will be listening to this through audio, but there's a stepper motor with a non-captive lead screw, and the lead screw can go through the center of the stepper motor. And LDO custom made one. We were like, we want this much force. And they said, sure. And it was something that we had tried to source and put in. So that was a huge game changer. And so then they did about 75% of the kits. They would send the boxes to us, and then we would put in the rest of it. So all of the electronics were being made in the US by Ultimachine, some other various things, either we were making or printing or sourcing and then finishing off at our place. We did all the final stuff at our office.
Fantastic.
But just going back a little bit, launched it for pre-sale, was hoping for 50 pre-orders in the first 2 weeks. I got 50 in the first 24 hours.
Wow.
And I hit 100. And when I hit 100, I said, okay, I feel confident enough in this that I can hire someone. So I hired someone full-time.
To do what?
Small companies, you work on everything.
Yeah.
She did documentation, some of the work on helping to interface between the person doing my programming, who is a contractor, and I, because I don't know very much about programming. I know enough to like work with people, but
Yeah.
not to do it myself. I don't know, prototyping, putting things together. There's a lot that goes into just like, how do you build something? How do you tell people how to assemble it?
And you have to
And so
answer
she
the
was doing
phone
all of that.
or the email
Yeah.
that people
Yeah,
have. Right?
exactly. Oh yeah, we had some one-on-one Zoom calls with people. It was more in the earlier days when we were selling a more expensive machine. But we did that, and eventually we launched the printer. Less people than I would have hoped, but
What's the time frame on that? When was that?
fall of 2023. So just over a year ago.
23. Okay.
We, I believe, started shipping in October, and suddenly had to figure out, how do we ship? And even more than that, how do we make enough chocolate in here? Because that was a whole other side of this, is of course your chocolate recipe. What chocolate do you use? And then who do you work with to get it made, or do you do it yourself? And I wanted to outsource it, but chocolate shops are not used to making cylindrical, air bubble free, steam free chocolates with very high tolerances, because they're used in your system almost as a mechanical seal. And now we just develop our own equipment to do our own chocolate.
And so the people,
And-
to be clear, the people who buy the machine buy your chocolate too.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
comes with 20 of our cocoa cores, and some people use their own chocolate, but
Right.
we always say it's easier to use ours. But we're
Sure.
not going to lock you out of doing your own
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. And so it went well. We had to figure out, how do we ship it? The first week we tried to ship 10 machines. And I forgot that, I don't know, how difficult that packing process was going to be, and learning about how to ship things, learning about
Yeah.
UPS pickups, stuff that we're much better at now.
So what did you start seeing people doing with the Cocoa Press printer?
Everything.
Yeah.
That was the coolest part. It was like, I made the machine. I don't know what it could do. People have figured out how to do like manual color swaps to do multicolor things, which we're now making easier with our new machine. But someone bought it for their wedding to make their own wedding favors, because it was going to be cheaper than doing wedding favors. And then they had a chocolate printer at the end of it.
Yes. Does it require
Yeah.
a lot of expertise to figure it out, other than just practice and doing it over and over? It's not that when you say the wedding couple, I wouldn't expect that they're chocolatiers or anything. And
Yeah, no.
they just wanted to figure out, and they've got a deadline to produce all this stuff.
With our machine, I would say learning the chocolate side is way easier than learning the 3D printing side. So I will be the first to tell someone, if you're thinking about buying the printer, just know you're going to have to put a little bit of time into learning how to
Yeah.
use it. It's not going to work exactly like your Prusa or Bamboo. It's a little bit different. And if you haven't 3D printed before, you can definitely learn it. You can learn anything, but you're going to have to put some time into it. It's not plug and
and-
play.
Yeah. If you have the patience, that's the main thing.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have the patience. And people respond to that in various ways, but I don't want the angry support emails. I want people to be happy with what they buy.
Yeah,
That's what we're
sure.
doing, right? We're doing it for
Yeah.
fun.
So really, you could think about, you did 9 years up to when you finally shipped a real product. You know,
Yeah.
for basically a year, you've been shipping your
It's
finished product.
I think from the outside, it has looked almost like an overnight success
Yeah.
that I've worked on for a decade now.
Yeah.
And also, it's always looked like it was going well from the outside.
Yeah.
That was something I always struggled with. It's just like, how do I be optimistic, but also be
Be real.
genuine? And it wasn't going well
But-
a lot of the time.
Yeah. I admire that persistence. It takes a lot of stubbornness to go through that. And I feel like the model that's out there a lot of times for entrepreneurship is, oh, it should take about 3 months to do something, and about 6 months to be successful, and a year before you cash out.
No, we're going with the slow
It's
growth.
slow and
I don't
steady.
even call us a startup all the time anymore,
Yeah.
because I almost feel like we operate roughly between the startup model and the small business model of,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to grow to be 100 people. I'm not looking for
No.
VC money anymore. I
But-
just want this to be able to sustain itself and grow a little bit for sure.
Yeah. But I think the remarkable thing that makers should realize, if they don't, is that this kind of model, and I hope you're able to sustain it. But you're employing people. You're doing a lot of good to have a business that people enjoy working at. The customers you serve enjoy your product, and it's meaningful. It's helping them make a living doing other things. But that whole
Absolutely.
ecosystem that you've connected, and it's not about cashing out. It's really, I think, building something that lasts and just
Yeah.
trying to build a product that's good. So,
Yeah. I don't know how to say this without sounding cliche or whatever, but we do what we want at Cocoa Press.
yeah,
We are fully, it's always hard to hire people for Cocoa Press because they say, what are the exact job responsibilities? And I say, here's the core of the job. And then here's everything else we could do. And if
that's a
you're
great way of
interested
saying it.
in marketing, if you want to learn SEO and Google AdSense and stuff, we can do marketing there. If you love events and maker fairs and rep rap festivals, we'll put our money towards those, which is obviously what we picked. We don't do any paid marketing at the moment, but it really is just what is a company if it's not the people? And so we just try
Yeah,
to have
yeah,
fun with each other and do what we want. And
that's
that's
great.
how,
But that's a creation too, right? That's something you've
yeah,
created. You've made it possible for people to work like that, and it's really
going
meaningful.
I appreciate that. And going back to when Ricky, who is the CEO of Levy, would come by my office, the other thing that he would always say to me is innovation is not just the product. Innovation is the business model. Innovation is how you connect with your customers. I don't know if he said this, but I would add what your company's culture is.
Yeah,
And I think we've been able to be innovative in multiple of those fronts. It's cool.
that's what.
It's fun.
So let me just ask you a last question. What's the future hold then? I get it from your answer, to keep doing what you love doing.
Yeah, we are really excited about Cocoa Press 2. We're excited to launch it internationally. I get emails every single day from people in Europe and other countries asking when they can get it. I know some people have secretly shipped it to a forwarder or someone to export out of the
Yeah.
country, but I will not ship it internationally right now. Cocoa Press 2, we will.
Is that mainly about
And
support?
it's about support. It's about just my amount of time to figure out taxes. Difficult thing. I'm struggling enough just figuring out how to do taxes in 50 different states or
Yeah.
figuring out which of those states I need to. Also, about how do you ship chocolate internationally. In the US, we ship
So,
chocolate in the warmer months only on Monday or Tuesday because we do not want it in a warehouse over the weekend. It's like weird little tricks like we picked
yeah,
up over the years.
that's
So the future of Cocoa Press is get more people to be able to do it. At some point, I want to be able to reduce the cost of the machine. We took huge steps in having pre-orders be $1,200, which is the least expensive Cocoa Press has ever been. That will go back up, of course. We're also starting a whole other side of the company. We're not talking about it a ton right now, but we did recently acquire Alien 3D, and they do monthly 3D printing project boxes. And so we're going to be able to just we'll run this as a completely separate brand and we'll be able to do more fun things in 3D printing. I think one of the coolest parts about running Cocoa Press is we get to decide where we spend our money and who we do business with because I want to work with cool
yeah,
people, ethical
yeah,
people, and we just want to make joy, right? Like we do chocolate,
yeah.
we're going to be doing 3D printing projects so that people who don't know what to do with their 3D printers can do some really cool stuff. And so I think there'll be a little bit of diversification of what we're doing
I have
going
to say,
forward. But
one thing, I remember going to Maker Faire Tokyo and seeing a 3D printer. There's kind of these Japanese suites, they're kind of soft, and they had a printer there, probably with a syringe type injection into it. But they were having, it was probably like college students, a bit like you,
yeah,
but they were there. It was just such fun to, it's nice not to see plastic, and it's nice to see things coming out of a printer that are as fun as chocolate.
yeah, I love seeing all the crazy things people do. And I also like that the chocolate industry is very friendly and the 3D printing industry is certainly very friendly. And I know the other people who are doing 3D printed food or 3D food printers and 3D chocolate printers. Like I just emailed them and I'm like, hey, how's
So
your product going?
if someone you hadn't seen for 10 years came up to you and asked you in one sentence to describe what you do, how would you answer that?
If like what I, if, when
Yeah,
once what I do now,
right.
I just say that I make 3D printers that print chocolate. And
Okay.
if my mom is around me, she goes, "Oh, you designed the printer. You invented the printer." She tries to give me a little bit more credit where I just,
Slough
I
it
take
off.
credit from, yeah.
Yeah.
I take more credit than I deserve from everyone who worked on the senior design
Yeah.
team, to people who have been at Chemical Press, to my current
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
But
Good.
that
All
that
right.
is the way.
Let's wrap it there. Thank you, Ellie, for your time. It was wonderful learning about really this 10-year journey that you've been on, and I hope
Thank you.
for many years into the future.
Thank you. And obviously, thanks for everything you've done with Mate. That really was my start. And I
Right.
didn't mention that I got to meet Miguel, who made the pancake printer, which was
Oh,
another one of my inspirations. And
yeah.
we actually went to Maker Faire Rome together at one point. And so, yeah,
Great.
thank you for everything you've done as well.
All right. Take care.